All right, guys, I'm coming back to you again. I did not realize that we were still having some technical issues, so I'm going live again. And I'm also recording this setup. So this is Summer Camp Success Challenge Day 2, and then we're going to go over all the things. I'm just going to redo it all over again. I did not realize that part of it was not broadcasting. So let's get into couple things. One, if you want to go to the VIP stage area, get to the backstage pass, you can scan that and we will get you on. So again, if you're joining us again, I apologize. I did not realize we were still having some technical challenges. I'm trying to get with our streaming company to figure out what happened. So let's talk about remember our number one goal with our summer camps is to drive traffic to other parts of our business. We may only get a child for a week. They may only sign up for a week of camp so that they can try out the camp and then sign up for other weeks of camp. So we want to make sure that we have some really engaging games and activities. And this is just a few of them. I highly recommend. We've got about 300 different games cataloged. And so we'll actually put it together for people that they're in our coaching group. But these are just some of the games. They do a couple things for you. One, it teaches communication skills between children. And because of these things right here, they want to just be stuck their face to a phone. Their communication skills suck. Conflict resolution things suck. It doesn't build any unit cohesiveness, so they're just doing things by themselves. So a lot of the group games, it really does help them work on building unit cohesiveness, communication skills, working through conflict resolution, problem solving, things of that nature. So a lot of the ones that our kids like are like Capture the Flag, Captain My Captain, Dodgeball. They still like a lot of these games. So these are just an idea of some games that you can do with them. Let's talk about all-inclusive versus a la carte tuition models. A lot of camps use an a la carte system. You sign up for the base camp, but if you want your child to do any of the extracurricular activities, field trips, cooking, whatever it is, you have to charge extra for it. And that even includes if they want to do a professional skills program. I recommend doing an all-inclusive camp. Remember, there are some kids that may sign up for your camp. It looks exciting, looks amazing, but they would never consider the professional skills that you do because they just don't think they could do it. But by getting exposed in camp and they get to do your professional skill, they may realize, wow, I didn't realize martial arts or dance or cheer, gymnastics, baseball, softball, whatever it is, could be so much fun. So I want to do that. A lot of times parents are going to sign up for 1 week of camp because they want to be able to do additional weeks, but they want to try it out first. And that's when we want to make sure that the camps are all inclusive, because here's a couple of things. One, if you have and have nots, some kids get to do it, some kids don't. I promise you, first question a parent's going to ask when they come in the door, did you have fun today? Do you want to sign up for another week? And if they were not part of the field trip because maybe their parents didn't want to pay the money for it, then they're going to be like, no, it sucked. I hated it. You know, it's almost like the Eddie Murphy Raw or Delirious, whatever one it was back in the 80s, where I got some ice cream and you can't have none. And that just rubs it in their face, right? So that really does not make it an exciting, engaging experience. So with us, we include everything with it. One, it's a much more financially stable model, less work on operational staff where you have to split staff up and move them to different places. No one's missing out on a sign-up field trip, or you got staff getting butt hurt because they had to go on the field trip or didn't have to go on the field trip. Why does that person always get to do the fun stuff? You don't have and have nots. Everyone's on the same plan. And regardless, you get tuition regardless if they show up for that camp or not. I'll tell you, historically, we've tracked it, that every week of summer camp, we have about 5 to 6% of the kids that'll miss a day or part of a day. They've got a dentist appointment, they've got family come in town, whatever it is. But either way, the way we set it up is that whether they come or they don't come, they're still getting charged. It also includes all the camp activities, any development we do with the children, daily field trips, whether you're going out or they're coming in. And we provide lunch on Friday in my camps. Not necessarily you have to do that, but again, it's just one of those things. And then professional skills development. If you have a professional skill, have them do the professional skill. Make it engaging, make it fun. They may have never thought about doing the skill that you do, but by being in your camp, they get exposed to. They may like, well, you know what? I could see myself doing this. And the parents see how fun it is and how engaging it is. They're like, you know what? Why don't we sign up for classes or after school? Again, we're using this summer camp as a funnel to push kids into our other programs. So let's talk about field trip reservations and planning. Now, the reason why I use field trips, whether we're going out or they're coming in, is I remember as a kid how excited I was when I get to miss school for a day because we're going on a field trip. I even lived in Germany. My dad was military, and I lived in Germany, and our field trips over there were amazing. We'd go out for 3 and 4 days. Nobody does those things anymore, but we would go to a castle and stay in a castle for 3 or 4 days. But I remember those experiences more than I remember what I was learning in class. But I even remember we're doing field trips. Remember the smell of diesel from the buses. So getting to do that and being on a field trip with your friends and not being stuck in the classroom and getting out, that leaves long-lasting memories. That's one reason why I like doing field trips. But make a list of the local destinations. Ask about special tours or activity. Be creative with the field trip ideas and ask if they will come to you. Now, not everybody has vehicles to transport in, or the cost may be prohibitive about renting or chartering. So there'll be mobile planetariums, mobile zoos, jump houses, water slides, laser tag. There's all kinds of different things that will come to you if the financial model makes sense. Make sure that the field trips are age specific, and you can even find places that are that can handle different age groups, and that could be another option as well. Another thing about field trips is that the perceived cost of a field trip to a parent is always higher than what our group fees are. So I've just listed a few of the ones we do here. So like Top Golf, or if you go bowling or skating or go to the movies, you'll know that the cost of what it is. And the parent be like, okay, well, they get to do these 3 or 4 field trips. Well, heck, that's going to be an extra 30, 40, 50, $100. So I did, and it's included with their cost. Wow. I'm getting a lot for a little. And what it boils down to is you're just booking group fees on that. So you get to actually make money on those field trips because of that. And then, like I said, for us on Fridays, we include lunch with that. So like midway down the sheet, you'll see where it says Reunion Ranch. So Reunion Ranch is a ranch that we go to. They've got zip lines and a pool and paddle boats and all kinds of different games and activities, but they also have a huge kitchen, and they'll cook hamburgers or hot dogs for us, and that's included with. So we can do an entire day field trip, including lunch, for $12, which is not a bad thing. So I try to keep the weekly cost of field trips around $20, $25. It may be a little bit more this year, but just because of inflation rates. But if you build that cost in there, and the perception of the parents is they're getting so much more. They're getting a camp. They're getting field trips. They're getting a professional skills program. They're getting lunch included. Their perception in their head is, man, that's $400 or $500. And if they're getting it for $250, $300, in their mind, they're getting an amazing deal. And then you're feeding them into your program to hopefully convert them to other programs, your professional skills programs, after school, whatever it may be. Now, we plan out our entire summer, each week, each day, where we're going, and we start booking these field trips in December. And because I want early times. We live in Texas, and if you get in 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it is blistering hot. And if kids don't have the right shoes, or they can get sunburned, we don't want any of that. I want them indoors in the afternoon hours, and we just plan those out. Now, what about field trips? One, there's group pricing. And then a lot of times I'll negotiate my staff for free into the camps because they need us, they need additional personnel. Now, one thing I'll tell you is that plan in advance about what number you think you're going to have. So that way you're not looking at a situation where you're getting there and say, oh yeah, we had 10 kids, and you show up with 20 and they're like, we weren't ready for 20. And also communicate with them about, how many kids, the numbers update. If you're going to have more, communicate with them. Just like we do with our staffing, they're doing the same thing. Whether it's staffing or supplies, if we told them we're coming with 25 kids and you show up with 50, maybe they really needed another staff member or 2 staff members there that day. They needed more supplies if they're giving you things to do. Like sometimes we'll go to a petting zoo or a feeding farm. And if they've only planned for 25 kids, but they had 3 or 4 bags of feed for each kid, now they have to scramble last minute to get all that stuff put together. And it doesn't build a great relationship with them on doing that. So you want to make sure and plan that stuff way in advance. If numbers change, communicate with them so you can make sure that stuff is always up to date. This is something we put together for each month for the staff so they can see in advance where we're going on each day and they know where it's at. So let's talk about when planning a field trip or whether you're going out or they're going in. If going out, there's a little bit more involved. It's not a lot, but it's a little. One, you need to kind of begin with the end in mind. What time do you want the kids back to your academy off that field trip that they've went on? So we need to reverse engineer that. So things we need to take in consideration is 1, travel time, point A to point B, point B to point A. So the next thing is that getting the kids ready for the field trip. Because I'll tell you, if they're going on a longer travel time, then you want to make sure the kids go to the bathroom. Because the last thing you want is the potty train going on. One says, I got to go to the bathroom. So you pull the vehicle off, and then all of a sudden everybody has to go to the bathroom. And the challenge is not a lot of places have multiple bathrooms in one location. They may have 2, but if you're doing a lot of kids, you want to make sure that you're getting them to go to the bathroom ahead of time. The second thing is you have to look at how much time do you have for the field trip itself, return time. And then if you are including a lunch, you got to build that time in as well. So there may be some field trip days where you have to leave at 7:30 in the morning to be able to get there, get back on time. When we do our Six Flags field trip for our older kids, they get there super early. We do some extra things along the way. There's a huge convenience chain we have here in Texas called Buc-ee's. They're across the country as well, but we have massive ones here in Texas. And we even build that into the field trip for our teen group. They think it's fun. They have a great time. And so we just build that in. They're allowed to bring extra money. I don't allow the 2 younger groups to bring extra money. So even if you're starting out and just running a camp, don't let the kids bring extra money. Nothing. Everything's included with that tuition cost we're doing. Then you want to change it up too. Some things you want to be educational, some historical, some high energy activity, physically engaging or mentally engaging. Make it different. Even if you're bringing things to you and you don't have a transportation model, then make sure that you are bringing things that change it up. It's not the same thing over and over again. Keep records of everything and all communications you're doing inside of these field trips or activities or adventures. Even if you're bringing someone to you, bring a mobile planetarium with you or a petting zoo or whatever it is to you, make sure we're keeping track of everything. We put together a field trip folder. That field trip folder has the reservations, any email communication that went on between our staff and their staff, it's in there. Because a lot of times you may have a different staff member on your team going to a place or they're coming in, and it's a different staff member on their team than the 2 people that made the reservations. And you don't want there being any friction or being delayed where the kids are sitting around, they start to get a little restless, and then all of a sudden we have chaos and pandemonium. So make sure you have all that. So keep a record of the field trip reservation, keep a record of the deposits, the field trip cost, so that you don't have one person saying, well, the field trip's supposed to be 10. No, we reserved it 8. And there's a disagreement there. Everybody's on the same page. We have been to field trips when we've gotten there and the person doing the check-in says, okay, it's $10 a person. I'm sorry, we have a reservation for 6. Here's the email. Oh, I didn't get that memo. Okay. And then we've already paid a $50 deposit and they take all that off there. And they're like, thank you so much for bringing that because we would have all been confused and then just standing around. Make sure and do that. Some field trip protocols. 1, make sure that you have a roster sheet that you do. I'm going to give you an example here in just a second. Make sure you have a roster sheet. Make sure that the parents have to sign their child in and out every day. Make sure that there's 5 check-in columns. I'll explain that here in a second. If you have lockers or cubbies, label them with a name or a number and put that information on the sign-in sheet, especially on Mondays when the child is maybe your first week, first day at camp with you. You're not having to walk around trying to find, where they're supposed to be at, where they're storing their stuff at. Have a notes and columns section at the far right-hand side. So that way, if a parent's payment didn't go through, or you need to give them something or make sure and talk to them about something, you can always put on their C staff and highlight it. That way they're asking for a staff member when they come in. Set your roll call times every day. We do roll calls every day. And if you're doing an early field trip, that roll call may be at 7 a.m. in the morning or 7:30 as you're getting them set. Pay your deposits early. Lock in your trips early. The closer you get to summer, more other camps are going to be trying to get their camps into those field trips and those adventures as well. Like I said earlier, keep records of the deposits and keep receipts in the field trip folder. This is an example of a sign-in, sign-out sheet. Now, we create these every week for each camp. These will sit on the front table, so when the parents walk in the door, when they're dropping their children off for camp, that'll be on there. And the camper's name will already be on there. The 5 columns to the right are when we're doing roll calls throughout the day. Parents will sign them in. At the end of the day, they'll sign them out. If they swim, if you're ever going swimming, one thing we'll teach you is how to use a band system that we use that dictates where the children can and cannot be in the pool. Any notes, locker numbers, things of that nature. So on the columns to the right of the camper's name, we do a roll call first thing in the morning, roll calls and head counts. We do another roll call and a head count before we ever leave the academy. We do a roll call and a head count when we get to our destination. We do a roll call and a head count when we're leaving our destination. We do a roll call and a head count when we get back. That way, every child is accounted for every day. Make sure the person doing the roll call and the person doing the head count are 2 different people, unless you're running a tiny camp and there's only 5 or 6 and you're not running 2 counselors. But I would highly recommend you have 2 different people running that segment. Field trip checklist. Let's talk about things we want to make sure and have on our field trip checklist. Reservation information. Remember that field trip folder, the deposit receipts, tax exempt form. Now, on day 1, I talked about setting up a nonprofit. If your camp is a nonprofit, the great thing about it is that every field trip you go to, every investment you make in that camp is tax exempt. So you don't have to go back and either, if you didn't think about it, we're paying tax on top of that, that's eating into your profit, or you're having to build the tax cost into it. So if my field trip is X, my local tax in the area is X, you need to build that into your cost so you're not eating that process. We even build the credit card fees into the camp cost so that when we're charging each week, we're not losing that 2.5% to 3% of cost into our outside of our profit area. Make sure you have your transportation sheets, your payment when you're going to go to the field trip, first aid kit. We're going to go over that here in a minute. Medications, sunscreen, hand sanitizer, and make sure that one person's in charge of that part. Now, one thing we talked about yesterday was medications. There are more children on medication now than I've ever seen in all the years that I've done this. Make sure you have one staff member that's in charge of the medication in the med bag, and they know they've got a sheet written out and timers set on their phone on when the children need to be taking their medication. Most times it's with food, so you can do it right at lunch. This is our first aid kit that we have together. You have Band-Aids, gauze pads, medical tape, scissors, tweezers, antibiotic cream, bottles of water, a glove, cleanser, hand sanitizer, alcohol wipe, CPR barrier, Ziploc bags, instant ice packs, tourniquet, clotting agent. There's eye wash. There's all kinds of stuff that is in there. Our coaching members get an actual list of this, but this is just a good place to start. And make sure that if you are carrying tourniquets and clotting agents and those kind of things, your staff is trained on them properly. Most times you'll never, ever have to use it, but it's better to have it and not need it than the other way around. Make sure that the first aid kit is well identifiable and whatever staff member is responsible for it each day. Now let's talk about transportation, because if there's anything about a summer camp that's going to be outside of payroll, is going to be your largest investment. It will be transportation if you're going to do field trips. And then the thing you can look at is if you're going to do an after school program down the road, at some point in time, you're going to need to invest in this. And I'd highly recommend you invest it. And we'll teach you how to do it the right way. But there's basically 3 ways you're going to invest in transportation. You're going to own or lease, rent, or charter. The rent and the charter are massively expensive. So we want to make sure if you're going to want vehicles to do after school and summer camp, you want to make sure that you're owning them. So this is a picture of our fleet, part of it. This is not all of it, but part of it. And we're going to teach you some things today. They're going to really save you money and show you how to upgrade your vehicles over time without any more money out of your pocket. So this is a vehicle that I bought. We no longer own this when we sold it 2 years ago and upgraded to the one in the middle. It's all black now. It was tan and gold when I bought it. It's all black now. So on the transportation side, this is a vehicle that we purchased. It's a 30-passenger bus. It has 3 air conditioning systems in it. And we spent a total of $1,800, including the decals. So one of the biggest mistakes people make is they get a vehicle and they want to wrap the whole vehicle. And that is expensive. So I would highly recommend not wrapping the vehicle. But we're going to show you how you can get these vehicles at auction at pennies in the dollar. So one, when you're looking at auctions, every day hundreds, if not thousands, of government agencies are auctioning off buses and different equipment, furniture, ice machines. I mean, all kinds of different things. And so all the vehicles are typically fleet maintained every 3 months, 6 months, 5,000 miles. They have service records on them as well. The buses and the vans have a capacity from, say, 12 all the way up to 48, 50 passengers. And you'll just need to check your laws in your state based upon what driver's license requirements are. In a lot of cases, when I'm purchasing these vehicles off of auction, I'll buy 2 of them and I'll sell one of them. I'll keep one, do what I need to do to it, sell the other one. And when I'm selling the other one, I'm typically getting a good enough deal that I can use the money from the purchase of this one or sale of this one to cover my purchase costs. If there's any updates I need to do to it, any decals I need to put on it, that typically covers all of that. And then you can recycle the vehicles every 2 or 3 years. If you see an auction come up, a lot of times these agencies are buying a lot of buses at the same time, and they're having to move them out. On these government agencies on vehicles, they either have time or mileage that has to be a determining factor before they have to move a vehicle out. So we want to make sure that we're utilizing that to our advantage. So if you can buy 2 or 3 of them, keep the one you want, take the other 2 and sell them. You can put some money in there. You can even take that excess money and use it for scholarship money for your kids if you have a family that's in need. Now, all the buses we have air conditioning, seat belts, and most of them are low mileage. Now, I recently sold a 2000. The one you're looking at there was an international bus. This is an E350, and I upgraded it for a 2012 Chevy bus. In the Chevy bus, not only was I able to buy the Chevy for less than what I sold the older 2001 vehicle for, but I got additional probably $2,500 in parts along with that vehicle that if we ever everything go out, talking about airbag systems and compressors for the air conditioning system. I was stunned when we got it, but it was all bonus. Another thing, and I'll tell you again, don't wrap the vehicles. A wrap can be $6 to $10K easy. And you can typically put all the vinyls and decals on the vehicles. And if we go back to here, all the vinyls and decals on those vans is about $500. So do it that way. For years we've tracked our marketing and don't get a van and don't decal it. We have tracked our marketing since 2001, and our number one marketing piece is always, I saw your vans, I saw your buses, all the time. That's our number one return on investment for marketing, is our vans are always there, because we have after school and summer camp. The vehicles are in the community every day. All right, so let's talk about a couple of things. For one, we used to purchase vehicles that were diesel engined inside of these auctions. And the challenge is that we only put about 3,500 to 5,000 miles a year on these vehicles. So a lot of times, and a lot of the state agencies are realizing buying diesel was overkill. So they're starting to buy gas vehicles, which will work out to your advantage. And so we want to make sure that, one, we're treating them as moving billboards. Two, we don't have to buy diesel vehicles, because one, the cost of that diesel is going to be higher to operate. If you've noticed that diesel fuel about 5 years ago jumped over regular unleaded, even though diesel is it's a waste byproduct of manufacturing fuel, the oil companies found a way to make money on it. Now, I have a fleet mechanic that comes to us, and they come and check it, and the oil is changed every year minimum. But at least if they hit 5,000 miles, I just go ahead and change it. And then you also need to put together a list of things every week you need to check. Oil needs to be checked. Fluids need to be checked, like coolant, washer fluid. Make sure things are working. If the seat belts, if anybody says a seat belt's not working, get it fixed immediately. Create a calendar of inspections on registrations. And then also, one of the things our coaching clients get is they actually get a vehicle maintenance log that we can keep that tracked. And it's also a great tool when you're going to sell them, because you've got all that stuff tracked as well. Now, purchasing used versus purchasing new. Now, this is one thing that, especially with our vehicle market in the current condition it's in, and it's not going to change until the new chip, a lot of the chip manufacturers come online, and vehicle manufacturers get more chips, that the used prices are going to come back down. But I'm going to teach you some tricks on how you can find used vehicles and increase your negotiating power. And I'll even teach you what I did to buy one of our buses for 50 cents on the dollar. So one, using Edmunds and Car Gurus are probably the two things that I use the most when I'm buying vehicles. And the biggest reason why is it tells me how many days on market. So if you were on day one, I talked to you about my mentor. His name was Red McCombs. And Red owned a lot of dealerships when I was with him. And I learned how the game was played. And most times when these car dealers are buying vehicles, they'll have a day of time that they have to move that and turn that vehicle over, so that they're not being charged an extra fee by the bank and holdover and carryover cost. And typically it's about 60 days. Some it's 30, depending. If it's a smaller dealership, a lot of times they only get 30 days. More established dealers, if they've worked it out with their bank, may get up to 90. But 60 days is about the sweet spot. So when you're getting online and you're looking at a vehicle, even if you're buying a vehicle for yourself, I do this all the time. Look at how many days it's been on the market. And when it gets past 30, 45 days, dealer starts to get a little antsy. You can come in and purchase a vehicle for pennies on the dollar, a lot less than you having to pay full rate for it. And so one thing you can do is, let me go back over here and I'll show you. So that bus, the bus in the middle, the one with it's the tan and the gold, that vehicle was purchased from Hyatt Hill Country Resorts here in the area where I live at during COVID. And it sat on this guy's lot for 10 months. And I was watching it. I was waiting to see if he dropped the price. And he didn't drop the price at all, which kind of shocked me. And then I called him up one day and I said, look, you've had this vehicle for 10 months. He said, yes. I said, I'll tell you what. He wanted $60,000 for it. And it's worth that. It's brand new. It only had 20,000 miles on it. It is a diesel. I don't typically buy those, but I was swinging for the fences and it worked. So I told him, I'll tell you what, at some point in time, you're going to take it to auction and you can probably only get about maybe 30, 31,000 at auction. I'll give you 33 cash today. And he said, if you bring me 33 cash today, you can have it. So we went down and bought it. I'd already test drove it and checked it out. So I brought him cash, and we bought the vehicle. And the thing is that vehicle taken care of could last us years, and it's super sweet on the inside. It's got 30 passengers. It's really nice, drives real well. So these are just things, if you know what to look for, you can get these vehicles. And I apologize, we're still having some technical issues, and I'm not sure why this stuff is doing what it's doing, but I got to get with the company we use and get it figured out. So just use Edmunds or Car Gurus. The other ones don't put how long it's been on the market. All right, so let's talk about how to buy a new vehicle and understand how that works. Right now, this is not going to work. I want to be completely upfront just because of the chip shortage, but this is something you can put into your memory banks and be able to use this when chips get back into play and the market for vehicles returns to kind of some normalcy over the next 12 to 24 months. So when you're purchasing a vehicle, the manufacturers give different things to the dealers for them to have money that they can either use or keep. Though if they don't ever use this money for the consumer, then they get to keep the money. So in the far left column, you're going to see what says HB, that's holdback money. Over to the right, you see two of them that says floor plan assistance, FPA, and the other one is advertising assistance. So between the two of them, there's about $1,600 there. So a lot of times when I'm coming in, and if you'll look at where the invoice total is in the A to Z plan, you'll see what the cost of the vehicle is and what they're selling it for. Now, typically A to Z plans, that is people who work for the dealers or work for the manufacturers. That's the cost they get. So I'll go in and tell them I want $100 over what they're paying, and that's the D plan, what they're paying on the A to Z plan. And then I want half of the holdback money, the FPA and the AA. Right now, you can't do that. And I'm going to be completely upfront about it. But when the car market returns to normalcy, just remember you have money there that most people have no idea even exist. Now, for me, using government auctions is my favorite because a lot of times I can get a low mileage vehicle. It's been fleet maintained and we can get it well. I mean, they're built like tanks. So here's some government auction links you can go to. You've got Cars and Vans. You can go to Gurus or Edmunds for used. For government auctions, you can go to GovDeals, Online Pros, Public Surplus. LSO is a Texas group. GSA Auctions is a government auction. Renee Bates is another Texas auction house. You can also go to RB Auctions. That's Ritchie Brother Auctions. Now, they will have just thousands of auctions they'll do in one day, and they do them fast. They don't mess around. You may not be able to find as good a deals there, but you'll still be able to do better than buying retail. Insurance. This is another thing you want to think about. One, you want to make sure that your insurance is adequate. Don't just buy the minimum. Don't expect to have an accident, but we want to make sure we're covered. Get an umbrella policy that covers your business. So and most times they're fairly inexpensive. They're not going to be over the top. Make sure your staff have driving records that are good. Make sure you don't have somebody with an out-of-state license. For whatever reason, you get charged more on your insurance for an out-of-state driver's license. So make sure if they're working for you, they're driving, make sure that you have them with an in-state license. Drivers over 24 are best. Typically that 24, 25 age is an insurance break and you're not getting tagged with that. Make sure your employees have like I talked about state driver's license, and look at different deductibles as well. If you've got good money where you've got good savings, you don't need to have a low deductible because the likelihood of you having an incident is slim, but we want to make sure we're financially preparing the proper way. All right, so let's talk about a really important piece to reducing frustration for you, your staff, and your customers. Also, the more communication you do with your customers, the happier they're going to be and the less frustrated you're going to be with them. So one of the things that I would highly recommend is that everything from your follow-up systems when you're doing the registrations, even your enrollment stuff you're doing for your skills programs, you need to have proper communication all the time. So as soon as somebody registers for your camp, they're sending an email and a text message, and get someone on the phone with them as fast as possible. One thing we teach our coaching clients how to do is set up to where the forms are automatically sent to them and they can electronically fill them out. When they're done, they hit submit and it comes back to us. We don't have to get them to hand fill it out. And then they have to go on either scan it and then fax it over to us or email it to us. They can do all of this stuff electronically. And we use a system called JotForm. So I'd highly recommend you do the same thing. If they register over the phone, same thing happens. They're put into a campaign and the information sent to them. We get all the information we need from them and move forward. Now, a couple things. If you're doing registrations, there's two things you want to secure from the parent right off the bat, and we make them non-refundable. That's your summer camp registration fee and the deposit for the week that they're reserving. If we don't have those two, then their camp's not registered. Their child's not registered for camp. If they pay the registration, but they don't pay the deposit, child's not registered for camp. If they pay the deposit, but not the registration, child's not registered for camp. But we have somebody calling them to get those things immediately to make sure we have those lined up. We're blessed that we have waiting lists every week. And we set our waiting list based upon when the registration and the deposit are electronically processed, so we know what order they came in, so we don't have people saying, well, I did this or I did that. Well, if it's not electronically done, then we don't have a record of it. If we do it electronically in-house, it will record an electronic receipt, so we have that as well. You want to make sure that you set up an orientation meeting prior to camp even starting. You want to set the tone on what the expectations of the camp is, what the expectations of behavior is. You want the kids to come in and see where they're going to be at. With a lot of these children, they're so anxious post-COVID. Getting to a new place causes them a lot of anxiety. So that they can come to your facility, they can meet your staff, they can meet you. That'll calm them down a lot. So we do 2 orientation meetings, allows them to do a tour. And that's also a way we can make sure, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, we don't have your paperwork yet. I need you to fill it out before you leave. The last thing you want, if you take nothing else away from this, the last thing you want is getting to the first day, first week of camp. And let's say you had 50 campers and 25 of them don't have paperwork filled out and turned in. You'll be pulling your hair out and drinking by the end of the morning. We want these things all done ahead of time. A couple other things we want to do. Make sure and go through the summer camp handbook during the orientation meeting. You should have a summer camp handbook that outlines everything you're doing, policies, procedures, safety protocols, everything in there, what you want them packing for lunch, what you want them packing to drink, all that needs to be outlined in there. Make sure you have a no cell phone policy and make sure and stick to it. This is how we set up our communication inside of our CRM software. I highly recommend you do the same thing. So inside of there, we send out communication typically 2 different ways. So if you look at this here, you'll see where there's a date and then it looks like an envelope and then there says HTTP, but it's an arrow. One is an email, one's a text message. And so they get those every time we communicate with them. Our camps start on Mondays of each week. We send emails out at 2:00 on Friday afternoon before the next week's camp. We want to make sure that they know exactly what we're doing. We have an arrival and departure schedule, and that's set up. We talk about what we're doing each day, what the activities are, and all that's set. So when you're doing this, make sure that you outline that and have it sent out on Friday. This gives them 2 days to get whatever they need before camp starts on that Monday. If you send it out on Sunday, they may not have time to get to it. And then all of a sudden, you have a problem on your hands because a child doesn't need or doesn't have what you need them to have. This is the arrival and departure schedule that we do. And so this is just a sample. If it's a camp, what time I need them there each day, what time the field trip returns, what I need them to have. So if I've got swim gear that day, or if I need shoes and socks, or if we're going to a trampoline park, I need jump socks. If we're going to a bigger field trip, what do I need? And that'll outline for them each day. So if they get that on Friday, they literally have 2.5 days to go get whatever it is they need to get. So when they come to camp on Monday, they have everything they need for each day. This is another piece too. So if they decide they want to do a change, we require a 2-week notice for any cancellations or changes. And then if they want to add a week, we have all this set. So when they talk to a staff member, since we already have payment on file, then a camper's name, what do they want to change, what the camp name is, what the skill or sport they want to change, notes, what staff member and what date and what time. And then that's turned into whomever does your billing and change process, operations type. When you're posting, another part of communications with your staff, you want to reduce frustration with the staff, you need to make sure they fully understand what their roles are each week, what time they have to come in, what field trips are going on, what we're doing, what time we're leaving, what their roles are. So for us, we have multiple camp. They're color coded, and that's why the schedule looks in the different colors. You may not need that. You may want to set up color codes based upon what their responsibilities are for the week. If they're responsible for medicine, if they're responsible for the sports bag, if they're responsible for the first aid kit, whatever it is, you can do those kind of things and set it up that way. So let's talk about a recap of all the things we've done over the past 2 days. Share the stories, make connections, setting up your corporation, looking at your state regulations. You go back and look at day 1, look at all this stuff again. Routines and schedules, staffing for camps, daily activities. A la carte versus all-inclusive, that's what we're covering today. Field trips, reservation planning, reservation checklist. Transportation, what path are you going to choose? Or are you just going to have people come to you? And that's okay too. If you looked at what here's a comparison. If you looked at if I had to charter or rent, or if I had to pay for someone to come in, what's going to be the cost differential on those two? What's going to be best for me? Nothing wrong with bringing things to you at all. And where do you go to purchase vehicles and buses? Fleet insurance, safety protocols, communication, parent communication, staff communication. One more thing on communication. When we send the arrival and departure and the schedule, what we're doing for field trips each day to the parents on Fridays, I ask them to sit down with the children during the orientation meeting and go over that with the kids. The children have in their mind what we're going to be doing. On Monday morning, we do the same thing just to reinforce. It will reduce the children's frustration level, and it will reduce their meltdowns during the week if something happens to change or they don't understand. Because if they don't have an idea about what's going on, they are going to get frustrated, and we don't want that to happen. All right. And of course, staff communication. And for staff, just keeping them informed about what's going on. If they know what they're doing, where they're at, what their responsibilities are, what time they're coming into work, what time they're getting off, it will reduce their frustration as well. And you won't have camp counselors snipping at each other. You'll have them working together. All right, just again, if you want to go to the VIP backstage area, get a copy of all the slides, the links, the notes, all that stuff, you can scan the VIP backstage pass and get there. We'll start that in about 2 or 3 minutes. We're running a little bit behind today because of the technical difficulties we had, but we'll get that rocking and rolling. I want to thank you guys for being here. I hope you learned a lot today. Tomorrow, we're going to show you great ways you can get into our boot camps and really how they help getting your camps built for you. And then on Thursday, we're getting into marketing and how to get your camps filled. And then Friday, we have more great information as well. This is Master Show signing off. I'll see you guys either in the VIP room or tomorrow.